It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're in our third segment on this Friday. Today is Friday the 13th. And actually, if you think about it for a little bit, folks, what is transpiring around us every single day are our worst fears. Nightmare. Our government, both state and federal, are collapsing. We have representatives everywhere surrounding us who have betrayed every aspect of their fiduciary responsibilities to us. We have corruption, betrayal, self-aggrandizement, ego, power, money, all of it twisting and abusing you. Ultimately, this cannot end well. And so in our first two segments, I talked about this new project to create a brand new state of South Missouri, to secede and separate ourselves from that which we know to be our what's wrong with our state. So let me put it to you this way. If you were ever a smoker and you realized at some point in time in your life that smoking was killing you, what was the only solution available? You stop. If you realize that you are gaining weight and that is unhealthy for you, then what do? You take corrective action. You cut out whatever it is that you're eating that's bad for you. You start to exercise. If you're at a job and that job has descended to the point where you're not being paid properly, or perhaps not at all, what do? If you're not happy in your work environment, what do? You change it. You find another job. If you are in any situation where you recognize that what's the circumstances that you're in are not in your best interest, that they are unhealthy for you, dangerous to your existence and your survival, what do? You change it. If you're lost in the woods and you're cold, you start a fire. Yes, it may be hard because you don't have any matches and you don't have a Bic lighter. So what do? You pick up a couple of sticks and you hark back to your days when you were in the Cub Scouts and you build a fire. You figure out a way. This is a fight, ladies and gentlemen, for our very survival. It is a fight for our physical, as well as our fiscal, our educational survival, our ability to physically survive. I'm telling you right now, and you don't need me to tell you this. If you're a listener to this program, you already know how I stand on this stuff. But we are living in a time when we have become the slaves. We have become nothing more than cattle who are tagged by the IRS, the NSA. They're keeping a log on you so that they know your weight and your age and your health. And they can decide when it's time for them to cull you from the herd. It's that easy. Our founders gave us every tool we need to recreate this system. Our founders gave us everything we need. All we've got to do is follow their example. They've given us a blueprint, a map. And if we follow that map, we can create a brand new state that will be a model of liberty and freedom, not only in the United States, but the world. It requires the confluence of great people. It requires the confluence and the input of intelligent and articulate folks. I'm asking you to help us. I had a whole show planned out today about how we were going to talk about journalism and the media shield law that they're trying to pass, which is another example. I mean, here you got the federal government trying to tell you that if you're a blogger, you're not a journalist, and therefore you're not covered under the First Amendment. I mean, are you kidding me? Isn't the First Amendment in first place for a reason? To protect your ability to speak freely? And whether you do that from your basement or whether you do that from your mobile phone, you don't have to be paid by the New York Times to have your First Amendment right. Who do these people think they are? And if you're incensed about that, then let's do something about it. Our third topic was supposed to be the GOP was stopped by the Tea Party from funding Obamacare in a slick way, that they were going to try to pull some kind of a fancy maneuver so that they could give themselves political cover and say, we didn't really fund Obamacare, it just kind of happened. And the Tea Party stepped up and blocked it because we exposed it. I put that up on our Facebook page the other day, and the maneuver and how they were going to do it. And we were able to defeat it. And we've thwarted their plans. We just basically took a broomstick and shoved it in the spokes. Our fourth segment today is supposed to be the NSA steals Google's identity to violate the law. I mean, here you've got a government agency that is acting as putting up a fake web page that you log on to with your Google account so that they can then pass through on the back end everything that they want straight onto Google, and you don't even know that somebody is sitting in the middle there. It's called the man-in-the-middle game. And somebody's sitting there capturing all your information and data. Now, if you did that, if you inserted yourself and a piece of software between the person who is sitting there at a computer screen logging into their bank and the bank itself, and you captured their passwords and their usernames and the balances, and you were able to transfer money, you would go to prison for that. But the NSA gets a pass? Really? Are you trying to tell me that the government that has put those laws in place is not expected to follow that same law themselves? That any excuse that they can give us, whether it's terrorism or something different, is acceptable? Really? I think what's happening is our nation, and if you haven't noticed the pace by which it's happening, our nation is coming apart at the seams. The headlines every day tell us of a new government abuse, a new government scandal. And it's not just a scandal that reflects back on the people who are perpetrating it. It's a scandal that affects your life. They're building dossiers on you. Why? Explain to me what one thing can come from that will benefit you. When government knows everything about you, when they know all about your health and your finances, who you talk to, who you're friends with, explain to me how any government can use that for your good. Please tell me, give me some, I don't care how convoluted your reasoning is. I want to hear it. If you truly believe that there's something good that can come from an entity knowing everything that there is to know about you, all your secrets, all your ideas, your thoughts, your friends, your family, everything that you do, your business, your health, and that they won't misuse that, please tell me how. Send me an email at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Please do so. If you actually have a legitimate argument to give me, I'll bring you on the air one day. We'll do a telephone interview. I will have you on the air, and you can explain your entire theory to all of us. I don't think I'm going to get any email on that topic. The truth is, everything that's happening around us is deadly to our future. The Senate panel passed yesterday a bill to protect journalists, but they've eliminated those who they consider to be non-journalists, including Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks, specifically mentioned them. A journalist who's sitting in his pajamas in the basement is not a journalist unless he works for a major newspaper or an online mainstream Ministry of Propaganda organization. Ladies and gentlemen, that's limiting your free speech. If you're not in the business of disseminating the news, you don't have a First Amendment right? How can that be? I mean, how do you justify that? Where does it say in the First Amendment that you have a First Amendment right to free speech as long as you work for some kind of a news organization? Dianne Feinstein actually says she insisted on limiting the legal protection to real reporters. Those are her words. Not 17-year-olds with their own website. Wow. I can't support it if everyone who has a blog has a special privilege. Or if Edward Snowden were to sit down and write this stuff. He would have a privilege. I'm not going to go there. Hey, Dianne, you're not the dictator of the planet, nor the dictator of California, and definitely not the dictator of Missouri. You're not going to go there? Do us all a favor. Don't. She introduced an amendment that defines what is a covered journalist. Hey, let me tell you something. Our First Amendment right to privacy doesn't depend on what Dianne Feinstein construes us to be, or Chuck Schumer. And they passed it on a 13-5 vote. This is the Senate Judiciary Committee. They've approved the bill, and they've passed it at a 13-5 vote, and now it's being sent to the Senate floor. 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. You call Roy Blunt, you call Claire McCaskill, you call your senator, and you tell them, if you attempt to violate the rights of free speech of everyone who is not what you define as a journalist, you are committing an act of treason against the citizens who aren't covered. It's that simple. I mean, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press actually came out and said this. Now, if this doesn't shake you to the roots and show you how they are all complicit in this, nothing will. If enacted into law, the bill goes a long way toward ensuring that reporters will be protected from subpoenas for their confidential information and sources. While it is not as inclusive as we would like it to be, it is not nearly as limited in that area as previous attempts at a federal shield law have been. We don't need a federal shield law. You're agreeing to something that is brought in after the fact. The agreement we made when we first negotiated the contract was that the First Amendment covered everyone's right to free speech. Now you want to come in 235 years later and say, well, we're going to redefine who's covered and who's not. The contract's been in place for 237 years. Who do you think you are to walk in now and change the terms of the agreement? That's how we ought to be looking at this, people. The contract we signed 237 years ago said your Second Amendment rights were inviolate and that no one had a right to restrict and limit your ability to own, possess, and use a firearm for a reasonably lawful purpose. Of course, we're not talking about somebody who wants to go out and rob a bank. And yet, the citizens of Missouri were just robbed of that right, and they changed the terms of the contract in mid contract on you unilaterally without your permission or authorization. If you bought a truck, a brand new truck, and you had agreed to an interest rate of 5% for the next 7 years, and suddenly, and it was nowhere written in there that the bank could come in and change the interest rate, and suddenly, in your second year of ownership of that truck, the bank says, we just raised your interest rate to 22%. Your payment went from $611 a month to $2,257 a month. Would that be acceptable to you? Is that not what they're doing here? Is that not what they're doing with the NSA spying scandal? We signed a contract that had an amendment called the Fourth. And the Fourth Amendment said, as a result of this contract, to empower this federal government, you will always be protected in your right to privacy, in your right to the privacy of your effects and your personal items and your homes. And suddenly, they want to change the terms of the agreement. What you're saying is that the contract we signed is subject to changes that you make without our permission and authorization. Nowhere in the contract, nowhere in the Constitution does it say they have the right to unilaterally do that. In fact, it expressly says they cannot do that without your approval. And yet, the people, your attorney who's representing you on this contract, is signing away your rights. Is that appropriate? Is that fair? Is that legitimate? Are you willing to accept that and just walk away and say, okay, I'll pay you the $2,611 a month now for the same truck I was paying $611 for a week ago? You're okay with that? You're going to, what, just adjust your lifestyle? Really? That's what you're being asked to do. You're being asked to accept your attorney's negotiation on your behalf when your attorney is clearly not representing you properly. These people in Congress, whether state or federal, are no more a representative of us than an attorney. An attorney who would negotiate like that on your behalf would be disbarred. How is it that you're willing to accept it from a person who you have elected and chosen and pay, but you wouldn't accept that from your attorney? You wouldn't accept that from your minister. If you went confidentially to your minister and you said, I want to talk to you about a problem I've got, and that minister turned around and used that against you, would he be your minister very long? You see, that's the conundrum we're in. That's the real viewpoint we should have. But we don't have that viewpoint. We have become so inured to the treason that's going on around us, the tyranny and the abuse that we take every day, that we've become like whipped curs. You can do anything you want to us, as long as you keep giving us that free stuff. As long as you tell us it's for our own good. It's like the Stockholm Syndrome. It's like a child who was physically abused. They love that parent. They'll work hard to try to give that parent their loyalty, even though it's undeserved. And at some point later on, when they grow up and they realize the depth of the betrayal, they resent it. They're angry, but it's too late. Are you defending and protecting your own kidnapper, your own abuser? Are you defending the attorney who betrays your trust? Are you defending the betrayer of your trust by re-electing the same people over and over and over again? Congress has an 80% incumbent election rate. 80%. I mean, I've not heard anyone who can ever actually say anything good about Congress. They have an 8% approval rate and an 80% reelection rate. Give me the mathematical justification for that. I defy anyone to explain how that can be, other than the fact that you have Stockholm Syndrome. You have abused child syndrome. That father who's beating you every night is the one that you will step out and defend. That lawyer who betrayed you and sold you down the river, and as you sit in your little jail cell, you say, well, he did the best he could. I know he lied. I know he agreed with stuff that I wouldn't have agreed with, but he did the best he could. When you find out he's been paid by the opposition to betray you, you still would defend that? How? Why? Under what circumstance? How can you justify that? The time has come for us to stop justifying that. The time has come when we say, no more will we allow ourselves to be betrayed. And we will put in place a fabric and a framework that will enable us, when we are betrayed, to actually do something about it. The law should work for us, not against us. That's liberty. That's freedom. That's the rule of law. Help us. Let's start a national movement. But right here, right today, let's begin a secession movement to create the new state of South Missouri that will operate as a pillar of light in the darkness, that will shine for all to see and say, I want to be like that. I emulate that. I want to see. We're going to take a break. Please find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. If you can find a way to communicate with us on this issue, you can send me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. Mike at americasvoicenow.org. It's also our website, americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/americasvoicenow. Then you can find this and every other episode that we do at youtube.com/americasvoicenow. You can remember America's Voice Now. You can pretty much find us everywhere. Please help us with these efforts. Please help us to accomplish the right. We'll be back in just a moment.